Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Doyle, Operations Director of CTAM Europe. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm happy to present you to today's presenter, Jack Davison, EVP of 3Vision. I'm sure many of you already know Jack and 3Vision. They're regular presenters of ours for webinars and our live events as well. Today, Jack will be presenting on the topic of Studio D2C, pipeline changes affecting the ecosystem. I've seen the presentation and it's as fabulous as always, so I'm sure you'll all enjoy the next 45 minutes. The time also includes a quick time at the end for a Q&A session, so please get involved and post your questions by using the Q&A button, and Jack will answer them at the end of the session. As always, the recording of this presentation will be posted on the members only section of ctameurope.com. If you're not a current member, please email info@ctameurope.com for more details. Members have access to 2 webinars a month, webinars and monthly podcasts from CTAM US, and you're also invited to apply for the week-long executive management program at INSEAD. This is live in person at INSEAD in France next March. I'll follow up with an email with registration details about the program in the next couple of days. Jack and 3Vision also have the registration list and will follow up with their own news separately. So thanks for joining. I will now hand you over to Jack. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. As always, it's great to be here virtually with everybody. I look forward to more non-virtual sessions as well, as we're all creeping back into the office. Welcome to the session entitled Studio D2C, Pipeline Changes Affecting the Ecosystem. I guess, what does that mean? Not only what does it mean, but why is it important? Why is it important to platforms as well, to cable companies who may not engage directly with content as much, some as much as others? Why should we be talking about content in the studio pipelines? And I would say kind of simply because all of the change the market is experiencing right now, all of those different topics we could talk about, including kind of the studios and their content pipelines, it all intersects, in my view, at the point of aggregation. It's indisputable, really, that the content markets are going through a period of change that's faster than they ever have before. It's always experienced change, but this time around, I think it's faster than ever before. We increasingly need to think differently about TV, with consumer attitudes changing, stakeholders having to think about a lot more different issues when they're finding, sourcing, creating, distributing and selling content. There are lots of themes we could talk about today. The future of the global streamers, the D2C services, the pay TV operators, free TV initiatives, SVOD, AVOD, FAST, all of those elements, and they're all in one way impacted by the studios and by the pipelines they use for getting their content to consumers, and that's why we're talking about it today. Arguably, the point of aggregation, where it all intersects, is a key area of focus, and as more OTT services launch, that discovery and search challenge gets greater. The fragmentation, which we've talked about for many years, it becomes even greater. And there's a clear need for simplified access on the user side, whilst also kind of the increasingly competitive side of the SVOD market for these services means that they themselves need help with distribution, with awareness, positioning, access, sales, and the economics of bundling. And the future for everyone is linked to how the market for aggregation plays out. And so really kind of what's going on with studios and their content is what we're saying. As Karen said, I think most of you know us. I've seen a quick look at some of the names. We've worked for some of you, some of you have even worked with us. And we're a global TV industry consultancy that works for businesses across the sector, solving their challenges in different ways. And I won't spend much time on that. I will give a plug, as I think I did, pretty sure I did the last time we did a webinar, for our podcast initiative, Inside Content. I really couldn't recommend it more. I've come late to the world of podcasts. I find it a very I think the word's relaxing, but sort of non-intrusive way to listen in on different things. And what makes this one great is we have really good guests and really good people on it, talking about the kind of the issues they face and what they're doing. I highly recommend you tune in. And secondly, more to explain where this data comes from, we operate Show Tracker, as I think some of you know, which is a tracking tool for TV content around the world. It enables distributors, sellers, and also buyers to kind of keep in touch with what's going on. But it also enables us to kind of run the data and run the numbers and look at what's going on, which is what we've done for today. I will go through the slides relatively kind of swiftly. I won't pause for questions in the initial run through, but at the end, please use the chat tool or the Q&A tool. I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll pick up questions at the end. But as a really simple starting point, obviously the streaming wars we kind of are in nowadays, if that's what we want to call it, have been going on for a good 15 years of kind of 15 years of SVOD launches around the globe. This is by no means exhaustive, and it's only SVOD, so you could add to this AVOD and start with YouTube back in 2006 and Hulu and Crackle, and then all the other regional kind of AVOD services. But what it does do is just illustrate the breadth of services in the US and across the globe, without even going into the niche and specialist services that are out there. And the size of that grey bubble behind all those pictures represents the subs growth to kind of over 1 billion subscribers now, which is pretty phenomenal growth. And if you break that down, actually kind of studios as such came in the main came to it quite late. Certainly in terms of the scale of what they're doing now, they came to it late. And before that, there were many more players involved. But there's a broader set of content owners as well, not just studios, and some of those also going to D2C, and also in some respects coming to it late. And arguably you could say that is the typical kind of profile of a new technology, new service adoption in terms of when the traditional players moved in. But a broader set of stakeholders, when you include pay TV and free TV broadcasters and telcos, they were coming on board a little earlier than the content owners, and take us to where we are today, with what is, quite frankly, an amazing amount of competition for the global streamers, for the local players. And last year, whilst there were the prospects for global SVOD services, and then either imminent to launch or recently launched services were pretty rosy. I mean, there were challenges and a recognition that kind of they weren't all going to be able to do the same thing everywhere, and a recognition that kind of scale was very important if you're fighting for kind of a top tier sort of podium place. But now there are a kind of I don't know, a confluence of factors that seem to be handicapping, or not so much handicapping, but adding challenges to the SVOD streamers activity, whether it be more recently kind of change in investor sentiment, but then also kind of the cost of living crisis, just purely the competition between the new SVOD services, and also kind of AVOD emerging as a strong alternative proposition. Means that kind of there are many elements and many factors they have to consider when it comes to kind of winning, and through content, through pricing, through partnering and bundling of the services, they're all working very hard to win. But just back to that point about investor sentiment, there are some pretty big additional challenges for streamers more recently emerging after Netflix's poor Q1 results. The investors have got cold feet, really, I think is a simple way of putting it. They're not, I don't think anyone's saying kind of it's a broken business model and it's not going to work, because that's clearly not true. But it is shifting their perspective after kind of their first kind of fully negative global quarter. They've had some regional quarters that have been negative. There's a lot of fear coming out of the investment community, and I guess our Netlfix, the bellwether for tougher times ahead, telling the investors to get out of streaming. But not that, as I said, but maybe more importantly, what standards should they be holding the streamers to? And in particular, what standards should they be holding the studios to, the Disneys of the world, the Comcasts of the world? And the kind of the response to the poor Netlfix result was pretty immediate and pretty drastic. And since October, their share price has fallen 70%. And that pressure's there, shifting focus a bit away from subscribers and more towards profitability. But they're not, in terms of the tech and the media sector, they're not alone. The whole sector is under pressure, and there are lots of new headwinds for them. They've had a period when almost nothing could work against them, especially in the US. But shocks lead to kind of corresponding impacts, and all of those kind of resetting. But despite this, and despite this kind of change in sentiment, I guess the studios have already pivoted, and to some extent, what some of them have done isn't reversible anyway, even if they'd want to. And I guess now what we're getting into is a more nuanced period, because history has always shown us that they can play in multiple markets in different ways. They can have different windows and they can be on different services. We've had an intense period of kind of direct consumer SVOD focus, supported by the investment community, who were asking for this pivot. And we were already seeing some very different approaches, but now with this different lens being applied to their businesses, maybe we'll see more, and maybe we'll see a bit more honesty is the wrong word, a bit more transparency about how they will approach kind of different markets and different situations, rather than just sort of banging the pure D2C drum. And this new focus kind of may enable them to open up more windows and do more with content and have different sorts of partnerships. But for now, let's just go back to let's talk about the pipelines more specifically. And I'll kind of starting here with what go through what this chart shows and what we mean by kind of, sometimes we use these terms a bit too freely, studio pipelines, kind of vertically integrated sales and selling to self. What this is showing you is showing you the percentage of premieres that that services are showing that are on their own services, on their own platform. So you've seen steady growth, sort of significant jump in 2021 to where 61% of premieres in the 9 markets tracked here are on services owned by the content owner. So behind that is Disney Plus and in particular Star, all of their content premiering just on their services, the Warner programming premiering on HBO Max, and so on. And in 2022, kind of more services now starting to be caught by that data, whether it be Lionsgate and Stars, Paramount Plus, and so on. And it shows you also kind of the variety by market and how kind of in individual markets it does vary. And we'll go into that, about how that obviously varies due to, in some cases, due to service presence. But really kind of part of what we're saying now is kind of, let's see how the new challenges and the focus on profitability may alter some of these approaches to extent, but we need to look down at these numbers and look into these numbers to really kind of look at that issue a bit more, because each studio behaves very differently, each market is quite different, and we can do that. We can go through each studio and starting with Disney because it's the easiest one to talk about. Disney remains the single-minded about single-minded in their determination to drive for subscribers and direct consumer growth, with the very kind of straightforward levers they have. India remains key to them, as you can see now. They start breaking out the data, with that red chunk being India, and that being up over 70% since the end of 2020, whereas kind of globally they're up almost 50%, and in the US about 20%. And the interesting kind of, obviously there's a bit of a hiccup with India in that the Hotstar platform has lost the digital rights to the IPL, but otherwise they're very focused on what they've been doing with content. But how may that change? May they start to change in the way they window content and how they behave with their catalog, such that they may monetize more in additional licensing deals to third parties? They alone may be under less pressure here, but it is something to watch. And to date, their kind of activity with third parties is transformed. If you look here in pipeline terms, their focus is clear. Almost all the titles they own premiere on their own services rather than third-party platforms. They are the studio that has been clearly kind of fully doing this, and what this data point shows is from all the premieres of Disney distributed content, not including the digital originals, kind of almost 100%, kind of 100% in average, and then you can see the differences over these different markets are on their own services. And this is content from Hulu in the US, from ABC, from Freeform, and the number jumped obviously after 2020 significantly when the Star component of Disney Plus came along, so that these additional pipelines could start flowing through. But a handful of deals are popping up. Movies in the UK, for example, are popping up on Amazon's 3V AVOD service, kind of short-term, non-exclusive AVOD deals for kind of quite high value and only slightly older titles, things like Deadpool 2, kind of Murder on the Orient Express, The Post. There's no signs yet that they'll start offering more kind of later windows for some of these digital originals, but let's wait and see. Let's see what may happen to them. But just to illustrate the impact of what we're talking about on markets, kind of what this shows is, on the right-hand side, it shows the cumulative premieres of Disney-owned titles in the Swedish market. And what you can see, quite simply, is before, when on the red line, kind of when Disney Plus came along, suddenly all of their premieres were happening on their own service. But the reason why we put this chart here is to show the kind of flip side to the coin. So you can see before that, kind of there was a kind of fairly varied kind of smattering of services in the market, showing Disney content. There were some of the free TV channels, there was the local services, SVOD services, Viaplay, HBO Max was a significant kind of customer for them, and you can see them steadily kind of offering more premieres of Disney content, and then suddenly flatline, no more. So this just illustrates how the market can shift for other people. And if you look at kind of just Viaplay's kind of, again, their scripted premieres over the last 5 years, you can see how they've had content from all of the studios one way or another, but you can see how kind of their pipeline from Warner, Disney and Fox will have gone now, and you can see how they've had a consistently kind of long-term deal with Sony. But kind of, and you've got to ask the question, what's going to happen now that Paramount and NBCU will be launching Sky Showtime? How's that going to impact kind of Viaplay's overall pipeline? So all of the things the studios are doing are shifting kind of what the status of the market is and affecting other people. Just moving on, obviously to Warner with HBO Max. I mean, they actually had not bad quarter in their last results, adding I think 3 million subs, so up to 77 million worldwide. It's great story, but operating revenues were down over 30% due to all of the investments they made in streaming. And there's lots of kind of noises coming from the new management now that profitability needs to be a focus. And with them, kind of their rollout, looking again at that pipeline metric, kind of is well, their rollout has impacted the metric of kind of vertical integration. You can see quite clearly where they've launched HBO Max. We're seeing almost 100% of premieres of their own content, and the key launch markets show their intent, kind of originally pipelining everything. There are a few kind of little linear businesses like Warner TV in France that are probably anonymous to this, but in general, kind of as we've said before, kind of same issue in these markets remain. The existing output deals are holding back further launches of HBO Max right now, and in theory, these numbers should go up as they launch in other markets. But Warner has been unable to kind of do that and unable to match those levels of vertical integration that Disney have had because of their existing volume deals. If you look here at the kind of the green kind of section of the yellow section of those bars, that is the percentage of their premieres that are coming through those third-party volume deals. And that shows how kind of it holds back their ability to launch, hold back their ability to vertically integrate. And it was only after kind of Warner's existing volume deal with kind of Vodafone Ziggo in the Netherlands was sorted out or expired that they were able to bring HBO Max to market, which is, I think, their most recent launch probably to date. But there are still kind of deals being done as well in what you would consider to be key markets. Kind of Warner recently announced a deal in Germany with RTL, which is a long-term exclusive deal for films and TV series that includes the HBO Max originals, the content that isn't covered by their kind of current Sky deal. And that's a market where we were already waiting until 2025 for the Sky HBO deal to run out. And perhaps kind of that's a sort of deal that may, I say may, but be rethought. There are plenty of others. There's OSN in the Middle East, there's Foxtel, Binge in Australia, OCS in France, and even Disney's Indian service, Disney Hotstar Plus, has that HBO deal. And there are cautionary sounds coming from the new organization saying they'll look at how best to monetize their content in different ways, and whether this includes reviewing what they do in not yet launched markets will be something to follow, especially ones with rich third-party licensing deals like the UK. But it means that you have this kind of huge new kind of IP like House of Dragons that's coming out in a not too distant future, couple of months, and will be coming out on all of these third-party services. Paramount, and a good one to talk about as they've just launched in the UK, but they're in a different position because they have more levers. They have their SVOD service, Paramount Plus. They have the Showtime JV with Comcast. They have third-party sales, and they have their own AVODs with Pluto. Their streaming base is up, their streaming revenues is up, their sub revenues up, which is reflecting their kind of growth in subscribers of Paramount Plus, and their ad sales is up, which they say is kind of reflecting growth from Pluto and Paramount Plus. And they again kind of they again have a mixed situation with where they've launched, but Paramount are more interesting because even before kind of the investor focus may arguably be shifting to profitability rather than subs, Paramount were taking a pragmatic approach to the rollout of its streamer Paramount Plus. It had no single kind of global blueprint for distribution. They offered the service standalone in some markets. They bundled the service with other operators like Sky in the UK. They will launch Sky Showtime with Comcast in other European markets, which I think was announced for June, but it sounds like that won't be launched everywhere, and certainly won't start launching until September. But just before launching in the UK, they launched in Asia, in South Korea. They partnered there with CJ&M for Paramount Plus with 3Vision. That's bundled with existing subscribers. And in pipeline terms, service presence dictates what kind of where they are on the level of vertical integration. And there's more variety here because there's more different types of services. But where they are present, that even though there are slight variations, they are integrating. And it's worth maybe just briefly talking about the UK experience, because they've just obviously just launched in the UK, and it illustrates kind of changes in the pipeline, but also kind of obviously Paramount and Comcast are including kind of Paramount Plus on Sky platforms in the UK, Ireland, Italy, and the German markets. And that deal includes their legacy pay TV channels. It includes the renewal of Sky as an ad sales partner. It includes Paramount Plus that's in the Sky Cinema pack, which was historically kind of the home of Paramount's Pay One movie deals, for no extra cost. It's only on Sky Q and Sky Glass for the Paramount Plus app. And if you're on Sky Plus, I think they're saying you're going to get some of the content through the set-top box, but you need to upgrade if you want to get the full experience. And they're not giving it to Now TV customers who have Sky Cinema. But the pipeline, you can see just the one other side to the deal, as well as the interesting way they're approaching the partnership. That what the pipeline shows is that if you split kind of the Paramount pipeline into their 3 different kind of content brands. You've got the kind of the Showtime content, you've got the CBS network content, and you've got the Paramount Plus originals. And almost kind of Paramount Plus originals will be going through Paramount Plus. Showtime content will be going through Paramount Plus, but there are some kind of overlapping kind of rights that are with Sky. And the CBS content and the network shows, it seems like they're going to continue to distribute those to third parties, and not necessarily hold onto those to Paramount Plus. So after that, we've got NBCU. Obviously they're part and parcel with Paramount, with Sky Showtime initiatives, but we can see their vertical integration is much more limited. The increase more recently is largely down to activity with Sky, where they've obviously been favouring their own pay-TV operator, Sky. But overall, kind of pipelining content is to either to Sky and Sky Markets, or their legacy kind of pay TV linear businesses that are still around, like the Universal channels, the Sci-Fi channels, and 13th Street. And the nature of their business drives this strategic focus, supporting their kind of pay TV interest in key markets, and recognizing when they aren't big enough in others. But and it supports that mixed content distribution strategy that is likely to stay and be no different. And kind of almost finally in terms of vertical integration is Lionsgate. Obviously, they remain a target from consolidation, certainly kind of the Starz business, predominantly holding on to Starz TV series for their own services where they're present, growing that overall to kind of 83%. And pipeline destinations here show a slightly more complicated picture when you include programming that is Lionsgate distributed but commissioned by someone else other than Starz in the US. If you include that, it does fall a little bit. But essentially, they're selling Starz commissions to third parties where no services exist, like in Australia, and selling other Lionsgate content to third party in Starz Play markets. And the final one, just to show the flip side of the coin after starting with Disney, is just talking about the kind of almost out and out arms dealer that is Sony, and show that kind of they are well and truly kind of deal making. They're the only one who has limited vertical integration activity in India with their Sony Live business, and in Spain, and in a few other markets, but not with their first season, first minute premieres at the moment, with their AXN channel business. And there is no sign that would change. And so overall, as we kind of, the picture is mixed. Disney are all in when it comes to the stream wars. Kind of Lionsgate fully focused on Starz at the moment. Warner growing, but checked by the issues we talked about. Paramount will soon be over 50% once all the data flows through from the UK. And Sony fundamentally independent, with NBC kind of outside of the US, kind of focused on their strategic priorities with pay TV and their new kind of JV with Paramount. And the context we began this discussion with was what now? What happens if extra pressure is felt to improve profitability and not just drive subs? And putting aside the more nuclear possibilities that would come from further consolidation, windowing may increase. Content portfolios may be split, some available for sale, especially when not so suited to the SVOD service proposition, but also, and perhaps more relevant to kind of the pay TV operator community and the cable community, the pursuit of partnerships may also take a different slant. Kind of the need for wholesale subs, the need for immediate scale. We may be entering a period when the kind of the calculations or the valuations and the things that are important are changing. But it may, and I stress may, be more impactful on the territory plans, because as you could tell by looking at that data and cutting it by the studio, you can see how it's different depending on where they were rolled. And if you roll that all into all the different markets and build in a few others, kind of at sort of a more recent period, you can see how kind of service presence, the timelines of rollouts, and the existing deal landscape, kind of how it varies. And but we'll see a change flow straight into South Africa now Disney Plus is launched, but will, as the optics have seemingly changed for investors, will that possibly make a change to the rollouts and what they're doing? And will some not launch? Will some more collaborate? Will some launch more, bundle with a partner more significantly? Will they launch with a different proposition? will we see kind of change the rollout plans? Will they launch not happen in some rich markets, or will the approach be less aggressive? And I guess we're saying that because there's lots of space in between kind of to consider whether a kind of full D2C, what was kind of D2C, which was what some of them were doing already, or the kind of older fashioned models. That's pretty much it for slides. I mean, I guess I should caution kind of what we said at the top really about the investment community. I mean, Netflix is not going anywhere. Yeah, they've had a bit of a hard time, but they've had however many, what is it, about, I think, what was that the other day, 40, 50 quarters of non-stop growth. They've suddenly had a negative quarter, and everyone's panicking. But definitely there's less of a gung-ho approach, and more nuance to people's strategies with these D2C services, and perhaps we will see some kind of new paradigms for windowing. There is more co-exclusivity going on, particularly with movies. Maybe we'll see how I mean, TV, where it's happening, seems to be more a result of kind of transitioning from legacy deals, and there may be new opportunities for some services, and we'll see variations. We'll see sort of territory issues changing and routes to markets changing, and it may well kind of impact kind of pay-TV relationships as that value of wholesale deals may become more important to some. I will take a look at the chat tool and see. Let's see, here we go, Q&A. Hi, Jack. Hello, Mike. Nice to see you. Insightful as ever. Do you see the rumors of Netflix incorporating advertising into their service being a statement that all streamers will now have an ad model to help fund content and technology? That's a great question. I think there's lots to talk about advertising. I think it's a bit personally, I find it a little bit disappointing that kind of there is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction from Netflix to incorporate advertising now they've got to focus a bit more on the bottom line. It's hardly surprising. I really hope they're more creative in terms of how they implement that and how they execute that. Obviously, Disney are going to launch their own ad tier, which I think may well help them, because obviously they are very, very cheap in a lot of markets, and it'll be interesting to see them sort of slightly undercutting that price with advertising, and then being able to probably increase the price of the basic service, and they will hope that, kind of as with Hulu, the usage will help them kind of end up with a net kind of ARPU result they're happy with. I think it's probably likely that more will do it. I think everyone feels that because of the money flowing into kind of digital advertising and digital video advertising and transitioning out of traditional TV, I think everyone wants a piece of that, and so why not the SVODs? But it's I hope they do it well. I hope they don't muck it up and make it all look dreadful. But let's see. What's the key takeaway for pay TV operators? I guess I kind of said at the top, which was sort of hadn't really given masses of thought to it when I said it, but I believe everything does intersect with pay TV operators. There is a clear kind of defining need for a decent consumer experience that has been lost for many. I think individually there might be, but I was kind of fundamentally disappointed when I did a quick review of Paramount Plus's launch, thinking how sort of unimaginative and unhelpful and not very clear kind of the service was. And I think if you add that, overlay that to other things you may have, it just makes it worse, and for the consumer. And I think for them, kind of, you've got to, for pay TV operators, for the top tier streamers who sometimes can't be that easy to deal with, you just need those really impactful, well integrated partnerships. For the others, the kind of tiers 2s and 3s, kind of, they really need you, especially the lower tier ones who maybe are migrating from traditional businesses. Maybe they've got pay TV channel group deals with you, or maybe they're smaller content owners, and actually let's not just talk about SVOD, maybe they're free TV players, and there's a broader set of OTT coming along, the AVOD set, the fast channel set, who we know are kind of that's a whole nother webinar, but fast channel set, who are kind of, there are pay TV operators thinking about what they're going to do with fast channels, and you've got to think about those wider issues, be able to operate a platform kind of without those kind of not realistic, without those legacy kind of technical limitations that we all face, that so that you can innovate and you can operate more quickly, and you're able to commercially be more innovative and kind of future thinking. So so it's kind of being ready for all of those new models and new relationships, because the operator's got a really important role to play. That, I think, is it for the questions. If there is nothing else, that's it. And Karen will obviously follow up with the assets and the materials for you to have access to. And thanks for your time. But that's it.
I'm here. Thanks very much, Jack. That was fascinating as always. Great facts and figures, blinding us with all your knowledge. Thank you. And we really appreciate you putting the time in to do this for us as well, of course. Hopefully next time it will be in real life. Now we're all getting back to some normality. Some good questions there as well from the audience. Thank you. So if anyone has any further questions, Jack's email is there. His LinkedIn and Twitter is on there as well if you need to keep in touch. Or if you wish to email us here, you can email info@ctameurope.com. If you wish to view the presentation again, this will be uploaded on the members only section of CTAMEurope.com. And we've got all the past webinars. You'll see some past ones from Jack there as well, and podcasts from CTAM Europe and CTAM US. So thanks again, Jack. And you touched earlier on your podcast. So when I follow up with everybody tomorrow, if you can send me a link to your podcast, I can add that on there as well. And then you can have some more listeners.
Great. Yeah? Thank you. And that's great. We love doing it. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jack. And thanks everyone for joining. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.